Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to another video. Today I am discussing the fearful avoidance tendencies to sabotage their relationships. I've pulled up about 14. They can be a little bit more, a little bit less. Remember that fearful avoidant is a combination style, so it's usually good to watch videos for the anxious attachment style, the dismissive avoidant attachment style, as well as for the fearful avoidance, because they have their own specificity. Now, fearful avoidants tend to yo-yo in and out of relationships, which is very confusing to their partners and even themselves. They often are terrified of themselves because they can see this pattern, especially if they've been doing a little bit more work on themselves and they see that, whoa, I have these tendencies. How do I manage them? And the most disempowering thing for fearful avoidance is that often they will go and seek help. Maybe they will go to therapists or hypnotists or alternative medicine practitioners and plant medicine and all of this stuff, and they find that their behavior and these patterns don't change, which you can imagine is very anxiety provoking, because you think, okay, well, this is just me. My trauma from the past has screwed me up and I will never be able to be normal again and have a decent relationship. But this is completely not true. All right, we can completely heal this attachment style, and I know it from myself, from my own patterns. I had a lot of trauma in my past. Some stuff was really, really gruesome. I know people had it worse. I know people had it lighter. If you guys are interested, one day I will maybe do a story about it for those of you interested. I know it inspires a few people. So let me know in the comments below if you want me to do a story, my personal story there. But the point is, if I can heal, I promise you that you can heal. So I'm going to start off the video like this, just to give you a little bit of cushioning for what I'm just about to tell you, because I know as we listen to this, we can really focus on all the things that we have done wrong now and also in the past, and just sit in this toxic bath of shame. Okay, so I'm just pulling up all of these behaviors as a way to bring up the subconscious patterns that are running your life. These are the survival mechanisms that I often talk about in my videos. You've learned these survival mechanisms to cope and survive your environment. So we're just going to bring them up to the surface, and then we're going to find other strategies for them, so that now you can shift from surviving to thriving, because this is what we want to do. We want to be in life where we are thriving, not just surviving every day. All right, so let's get straight away into it. So number one, I'm going to start off with boundaries. Now, my fearful avoidance, often you think that you have good boundaries, but often you don't. Okay, you often have volatile boundaries. Exploding at people is not having good boundaries. Good boundaries is understanding, like, oh, here I am losing my composure. I'm getting a little bit agitated. So I'm at a level 2 out of 10 and I can speak up about it, but you don't. What you usually do is that because you don't have boundaries, you overgive. Okay, so I'm also going to mention a few core wounds that are fueling this. Is this feeling of I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, and I will be abandoned, just like the anxious preoccupied, that makes you show up so much in your relationships. You just want to please everybody. Your trauma has made you hyper aware to everybody else's needs, because when you were a child, you must probably had to make sure that everybody around you was okay, because if they were okay, you would be okay. All right, so now you show up in relationships, and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful that you want to please everybody, and you tune into them, and you want to see them, and you want to fulfill all their needs, and that is really, really great. It's a beautiful quality. You don't have to throw it away. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you overgive to the point of depletion. Okay, so it's like a slingshot. You pull it so far in one direction, you give. It's like if it were money, for example. Say, for example, you have $100. You give $200. You are in the red. You are in debt. Now you're completely depleted. So what do? You swing in the opposite direction. So one of the easiest things that you can do as a fearful avoidant who is healing by themselves through watching videos on YouTube or in other ways is to just become aware of your emotional energy that you usually just dispense like it's free sweets to everybody. Start to place value on that. And what I mean that when you pick up the phone to listen to your friend at 3 a.m. who is complaining about her boyfriend, that is your emotional energy that you're giving out. You don't realize that. You hold space for so many people in your life. You're just giving. You're there for everybody. You're there for your partner, for your family, for your friends especially, right? Because your friends are mostly like your family, because usually fearful avoidants don't have great relationships with their family, so their friends they value a lot. So you give a lot to them, and then you start to go below your normal. You become so depleted, and then you start to feel horrible. You start to feel depressed. You start to feel used, and then you get really resentful. And you get really resentful because the people around you that you have given to don't realize that you are now depleted and they need to give to you. So you don't voice your feelings, you don't voice your needs, which is another way of sabotaging yourself in the relationship, is not voicing feelings and needs. I can see I'm a little bit not going to go in order of these numbers, but let's just go with it because they all fit into each other. So you don't voice your feelings and your needs, and then you blame everybody else for it. Okay, and that's how you sabotage your relationships. First is just overgiving because you're not in tune with your body. I know a lot of you guys do yoga and breath work and meditation, and you hike or you jog, or you can be intensely present. You may be dancing, you're doing something with your body, but that doesn't mean you're in tune with the subtleties. I'm a yoga teacher. I used to practice hardcore yoga for like the past 17 years of my life. But it's tuning into your emotional energy takes refinement, okay? So starting to notice subtle sensations, linking them to emotions, and try to spot yourself when you start to lose energy, when things don't become fun anymore, okay? Because often you overwork and then you don't look after your own needs. And you don't tell other people that you have needs, that you need help with the laundry, that you need help with the kids, that you are stressed out and you need somebody to hold space for you. A lot of the time, fearful avoidants will get onto the phone and want to speak to their friend about their own issues, and they end up holding space for their friend. Okay, so it's important that you understand how to start to take up space. Tell people like, hey, I'm a little bit depleted. This is what I need. Are you able to hold space for me while I vent? Or are you able to help me with the laundry? Or can you take the kids to school today because I am exhausted and I really need the sleep? And I promise you, when you start doing this, you stop feeling so bipolar, for a lack of a better term, right? I'm just using this not as a clinical term, but as a term that we use just commonly as human beings. A lot of us just say like, I feel bipolar as a fearful avoidant, because you're swinging from, take it all, I give everything to everybody, and then you have to go back and pull back, and you feel so depleted. All right, so just doing this simple step, having more boundaries, will prevent you from swinging like so drastically. Number 2, some fearful avoidants are spiteful, and the reason that they are spiteful is because they want their partner or somebody in their life that is not hearing them to experience what they are feeling, so they can stop hurting the fearful avoidant. Okay, so when they feel like they perhaps have said and discussed something, and sometimes they do it in not direct ways, which a lot of people can miss, then what happens is that they will want the other person to feel what they are feeling, to say like, hey, can you see this doesn't feel good to me? Please just stop doing that. Okay, so this has to be addressed through conversation, communication. Spitefulness hurts the other person, and then we are just like, poking each other eyes out, like an eye for an eye. There's no point in doing that. So it's very important to learn how to communicate, just saying things like, hey, you know what, when you said this or that, what did you mean? What did you mean by that? Because how it landed for me was very hurtful. And I would prefer if you didn't make comments like that, or I would prefer if we handle these situations differently, or I would prefer this behavior change. Otherwise, I will have to move away, or I will have to do X, Y, Z, and you state your boundary. Okay, this is a very good way to approach things because, first of all, fearful avoidance, this is another thing on my list, is fearful avoidants tend to assume the worst. And the reason why this happens is because when things happen in our daily life, our brain gets trained to make sense of it by going back into the past and going like, oh, when this thing happened in the past, this is what it means. And this is how you have to behave, right? And that's that whole attachment strategy. It's that whole dance, the template that is in us of how we need to behave in the world. Got programmed when we were 0 to 7. Or it could have been programmed through some intense trauma experiences throughout our lives. Or, good experiences can also change that, just for the record. So here we have to look at what is the actual intent of the other person. Notice that we have a tendency for the past to flood into the future, into the present moment. That's all human beings. This is why we ask questions. What did you mean by that? This is how, and then telling the other person this is how it landed. If they still gaslight you and tell you like, oh, but you have no reason to feel upset and blah, blah, blah. Okay, some people are just emotionally not intelligent, so they will try to defend, and then you can just say like, okay, great, I understand you don't get it, but this is really hurtful for me, so I would prefer if you do X, Y, Z, or I just have to remove myself from the situation, just so you know this is how I feel. Okay, and that's how you start to honor your own feelings. And when you voice what it is that you're feeling, other people have the opportunity to show up and honor you, instead of you just keeping quiet and then eventually it escalates into a fight, or you withdraw, or you completely ghost them. Okay, number 3, suspicion. Okay, I can write a book about suspicion. I almost feel like I just want to niche my whole career into trust, because this is a big issue for me. Like I've spoken about to you guys about in my previous videos. Fearful avoidants have trust issues, and they are quite broad, where for other people, like anxious preoccupieds, they don't trust that their partner will stay. The dismissive avoidant doesn't trust their partner with their emotions and their needs. Fearful avoidants have this fear quite broad because their trust has been broken in the past. They have experienced a lot of betrayal in many different forms. So betrayal is about when we have either a spoken or an unspoken agreement that gets broken. So say, for example, growing up in a family, we have this idea that my parents are my parents and they should protect me. And if they don't protect me, then that is when betrayal happens. So if you look at your life like that, as a fearful avoidant, you can then see like, oh, this is why I have so many feelings of betrayal. And because that happened in the past, we become blind to it. So I usually say that the BS meter is broken, right? Because you become accustomed to just so much trauma and so much bad behavior. Maybe one parent was cheating, maybe both parents were cheating, maybe you've had partners that were cheating. you become so blind to seeing the red flag. So this is why you just repeat the same thing over and over and over, because you're like the frog that's being cooked in warm water. It's just like, oh, this is just becoming normal and normal and normal. And then you have this perception that everybody in the world cheats. Everybody in the world is unfaithful. So when you move out into the world, you don't even think that there are people who are faithful, and what do the green flags look like? You've never experienced green flags, and you're not even in those environments. So you start to be very suspicious of just everybody. And that's exactly why I mentioned you can also assume a lot of negative from other people. And suspicion drives people away, right? And the suspicion can emerge in your romantic relationship, where you can feel like your partner is going to cheat, and you break their boundaries through going over their phone or following them, or, you know, whatever it is that suspicion makes people do, all that crazy behavior. Not calling you suspicious, but the behavior, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I know I did some crazy things when I was feeling suspicious. So, all right. Number 4, putting people on a pedestal. The higher you put people on a pedestal, the further they're going to fall. This also breaks your own trust. So you put people on the pedestal, you often go out into the world and you see people whose traits you want. So say, for example, you are an aspiring dancer, and then you meet another dancer, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this person has made it and they are so incredible, and you shower them with all of these compliments, which is why fearful avoidants often tend to love bomb, okay? And they might not even be aware that they are love bombing, because they really, really admire this trait in a person. But when we do that, we dehumanize people, which basically means that we don't see that this person has faults. And when we don't see that, we don't give them an opportunity to mess up. And this means that whenever they do a misstep, they really disappoint us. We feel really disappointed, because we, in our heads, believe that this person is like this perfect person, whether it's your yoga teacher, whether it's your coach, you know, whatever it is, whether it's your partner, you think that this person is not perfect, they can't do anything wrong, and when they do step out of line, and because they are human, they will make mistakes, you immediately start to devalue them. And the devaluing is not so much to devalue the person, but to protect yourself, because it triggers so much feelings of unsafety and fear of being hurt and suspicion and so many different wounds, because fearful avoidants just have a lot of core wounds. But saying that, all of these wounds can be healed. You know, I see fearful avoidants when they heal like 3-4 core wounds, they're about 22, their life changes. You can make huge changes just reprogramming one of these core wounds, you know, like safety or being powerless or the unworthiness. So again, just bring it back a little bit in case you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm messing up my life so much. Just understand all of this, you're starting to heal by just listening to these videos, bringing these patterns to your conscious mind. You'll be so much more aware of it now, and you will not be so prone to doing them, right? Some things are harder than others to overcome, but you can get there. All right, so don't put people on the pedestal. Let's go now to volatility. Okay, volatility is when people just lose their temper. And to everybody else, it seems like the fearful avoidant loses their temper quickly. What they don't know is that fearful avoidants often keep quiet for prolonged periods of time. So they try to be gracious and give people space. And they will see that their friend or their partner or their family member does something to annoy them. And instead of speaking about it there and then, they will go like, oh, that's annoying. I'm not going to be this person, this petty person to talk about this and have conflict and whatever. So they shove it down and shove it down. And eventually, all of that energy becomes so hurtful. It's like these paper cuts that eventually the fearful avoidant explodes. And everybody else just sees the explosion. And this is what makes fearful avoidants often feel misunderstood and so hurt by the world. Because they're like, but you've hurt me. You've hurt me several times. You didn't say I was cool about it. And now I do one mistake or I lash out in anger because you've hurt me and now you're blaming me. Okay, so they feel really misunderstood. But this can all be resolved by learning how to address small things as they happen. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. You know, you can just say to the person like, hey, that makes me feel uncomfortable, don't do that. Or like, please give me back my clothes. Like, you've borrowed my money, when can you give it back? Okay, just learning to stand up and speak up for yourself. I know it feels so intense at first, but it makes you feel so empowered. And if you think that you don't have to feel shame anymore for your behavior and feel like a bad person and all the guilt that you're carrying for sometimes exploding, just by being proactive, speaking up about your feelings, your needs, and your boundaries in due time when you are at like a 2 out of 10 on an emotional scale instead of at, you know, any time when you go past a 5, that's when it starts to get dangerous. But fearful avoidants often speak about things when they're at a 10 and they're like, yes, I told them I have good boundaries. No, you don't. You have explosive boundaries that push people away. You can have boundaries that bring people close to you, that tell people about your preferences, your likes, your dislikes. You can just be going like, hey, you know what? I don't really like that. I prefer this. That could be a boundary. That could be informing a person about what you like or your preferences. And then you can say like, you know, and when this happens, then I need to, I don't know, distance myself away from the relationship, or, you know, this really irritates me. If this is going to continue, I'm going to have to like just take a walk, whatever it is, right? Just learn to speak about it as it happens, and then you will stop being so volatile. And the passive-aggressive behavior is also here. So can you see how fearful avoidants have that swing in so many of their personality traits? Okay, like you go from passive, and then all of a sudden it goes to aggressive. And so it's a swing constantly. So the big thing with fearful avoidance is trying to become a lot more sensitive to your own feelings, your own needs, speaking up when you're still calm, learning how to do that. I know it's scary, but you will learn. The more you practice, the more you see that nothing happens in the external world that is going to be so damaging to you. A lot of my fearful avoidant clients are terrified that if they speak about a boundary or a need, that they will be physically hurt, which is also very different to anxious, preoccupied individuals and dismissive avoidance. Generally, if there has been some trauma or physical abuse in the past, then of course the fearful avoidant will worry that if I open my mouth, I will be physically abused. And this is a big fear. So working through this, you know, if you're not working with a coach, I really had to talk myself through this. I did work with a coach. I also worked on my own for a big part of this work. And I had to talk myself through it and go like, you know what, that happened in the past. This person at a shop, a cashier or my boyfriend is not going to attack me when I voice my feelings and my needs. Okay. Okay. So, number about 7, let's just say it's 7, plan Bs, having open doors to past relationships or having a friend that wants to be with you while you are in a relationship. So fearful avoidants have all of these open doors because they have a fear of abandonment. They also fear that people are just in it for themselves, just like the dismissive avoidants do. So they tend to have open doors. And that just leads to complications, because when you have issues in the relationship, the first person that you should be talking to about this, maybe your coach, okay, maybe somebody like that will help you to work through your emotions and your core wounds and what's really going on. But then you should be speaking to your person, to your partner about these issues, not to some ex or some partner B. I'm not saying all fearful avoidants are like this, right? But just check it out. Some friends, are a little bit more than friends, and they are there and they are standing in the way from you having true intimacy and closeness with your partner. And I'm not saying that you have to completely close you have to close the doors if you want to have a deep relationship with somebody, right? As in, set boundaries. It just depends. Like, some relationships you can't have in your life, but you have to decide that for yourself. Like, can this person still be in my life, and can we be friends from both sides? Otherwise, that is just making your relationship vulnerable, and your partner is going to sense that. Even if they don't say anything about it, on some level, the relationship is not going to feel safe. We communicate so much more through our bodies and our subconscious mind than you can imagine. And verbal communication is really... we need to do it, but at the same time, it's not so much what you say, but it's what you do and where your mind is, So if in your mind you have all of these fantasies about somebody else, or you have these exit doors, your partner is going to feel that you're not present in the relationship. The relationship is not going to deepen, and that can be a sabotage. And of course, if they find out, then there's going to be conflict. Okay, number 8. Expecting perfection. Now, I've mentioned that fearful avoidants have a core wound of I'm unworthy and I'm not enough, which makes them overcompensate. So usually fearful avoidants are high achievers. They push themselves in everything. Like, if they are at a cookout, they want to be the best at the cookout. They want to be the best cook. If they are on a sports team, they want to be the best. They want to be the best looking. They just want to show up as their best selves, and they really push themselves. And they can also expect perfection from a partner in that same way. But from their partner, it's really more about, I want you to be on perfect behavior so that you don't hurt me. So fearful avoidants will often look at their partner and the world through the lens of fear, so that if their partner does anything wrong, that could potentially hurt them, and they start feeling very scared. So this is why there is that fearful part to the fearful avoidant, because there is this fear. And that's also very distinct to the fearful avoidant versus the anxious and the dismissive avoidant. So see if you can... and I know some of the fearful avoidants out there will be like, no, I'm really accepting of everybody else. I'm just really hard on myself. And you can be 100%. I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to be exactly like that. But there are certain things where I did expect perfection from my partner. Like maybe perfectly always telling the truth, or perfectly being... emotionally honest, like how they're feeling about something, or whatever it is. Just, this is something good to be journaling about. Like, are your boundaries a little bit rigid in certain areas? What are your biggest fears? And can you release that a little bit? Okay, now we're going to go to, I think this is around number 9, fear. Okay, so the fear I talked about. And number 10, tasting. Tasting could be trying to make their partner jealous. It could be being really difficult, really sad or depressed or angry, pushing the partner away to see if the partner really is invested in them. So they could also be testing to see, like, will their partner give them space? I've also made a video for the anxious preoccupied and how they sabotage their relationships. So I'm not really going to go into the jealousy part so much. So go check that one out as well. It will also help you to see if there are any of those behaviors that you're doing in your relationships. Okay. So then number 11 is withdrawing, and the withdrawing is mostly because they are hurt, or perhaps they have overgiven and they are depleted, or they just need space for themselves and they don't really know how to navigate that. It could also be a fear of commitment. And the fear of commitment really comes in with, can I trust that the person I'm giving my heart to is going to honor my vulnerability? So there's a lot of fear when it comes to commitment. Maybe not initially in the relationship, but as the relationship deepens. The fear can also be a fear of being enmeshed in the relationship and losing themselves. And again, this goes back to boundaries. Can you see a lot of these issues can be resolved through boundaries? 13, criticizing. I've already spoken about that on the other video. But just to recap, under every single criticism, there is an unexpressed need. And once we start to verbalize that, we feel a lot more powerful in the world and we have more peaceful relationships. So if instead of criticizing, just go back and go like, okay, what is the need? How can I verbalize that in a way? Because remember, when you want something from somebody, you want something. It's like you want money from them. You can't get something, get them to give you something when you mean to them. So how can you be nice to them and not manipulative, but at the same time, how would you like to be asked for something? And if you have a romantic partner, just speak to them, and just say like, hey, when I have a request, how can I speak to you about it that is going to be not triggering to you, or are you open to it? What is the deal? How can we have conversations about these things? Having an open policy where you're considering the other person and having conversations about conversations is the best way, because you need to learn your partner, their triggers, and you need to also talk about yourself and teach them how you want to be treated in a relationship. Number 14 is breaking up. So the breaking up, like I did in my previous video about the anxious preoccupied individuals, for them breaking up, for the anxious, breaking up is more about testing the partner to see if they're going to have this grandiose gesture of like, no, come back, don't leave me. Whereas the fearful avoidants, if they get very triggered, they might really want to push their partner away. With their anger, with breaking up, they will feel extremely hurt and they will believe that the relationship is completely over. They cannot work through certain issues. And then they will cool down, and often they have that yo-yo again when it's on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. So here, first, the whole process is you're going to connect with your feelings, connect with your needs. Learn to speak about your needs, make requests, and also learn how to fulfill your needs by yourself. From your needs, you understand how to set boundaries, where you need to set boundaries. Set boundaries so that you can be the most sane person. What I mean by that, what people don't understand about boundaries is that we're not setting boundaries just to set boundaries. We're setting boundaries for myself. So how can I show up as my best self where I'm most comfortable? All right, so that I know if my partner has another partner, right, that's not going to work for me. A lot of people are in polyamorous relationships right now. I'm not. That wouldn't work for me. That would make me feel extremely insecure. And a lot of people can have theories about this why, and that's fine. But I have to know myself, and then I have to know to verbalize that to my partners. Like, I'm into monogamy. This is where I feel the most comfortable. This is where I can show up my best self. If you have another partner behind my back, or even in, obviously I cannot be in that space, because that is just going to consume too much of my mental space. If you're going to lie to me, I am going to be highly suspicious, and I'm going to show up as this very anxious person that I don't want to be. So this is why I have boundaries, right? So I have boundaries. We have boundaries where who do I want to show up as, and what do I need in my life in order to do that? Okay. And that's where our boundaries come in. And therefore, we can speak about these conflicts. Okay. So we have all of those things. We can set the boundaries and we can resolve conflict, and then you will stop the volatility, feeling used in the relationships. I used to feel used all the time. It was horrible. So I really hope that you start to appreciate yourself and how much you give. I wasn't aware of how much I gave. It was just like I had this open tap of energy for everybody else, and I didn't take anything for me. So boundaries, you know, is such a big thing, and speaking up is also such a big thing. And then you start to feel empowered, and you shift from surviving to thriving, and you can have this beautiful life of love, safety, and freedom. Thank you so much for watching, for subscribing, and for sharing this. Thanks for all your comments. I'm really enjoying interacting with you guys. Please put all your comments down below. Please put any requests down below, and I will make sure to make a video for you. Thank you so much. Big love.